Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be doing a Q&A with questions I collected from Instagram and Patreon while watching my latest painting come together. But first I want to say a few quick words about World Watercolor Month, which starts today. World Watercolor Month, or WWM for short, was founded by Charlie O'Shields of Doodle Wash in 2016 as a celebration for watercolorists around the world. It's meant to inspire people to paint with watercolors while raising awareness for the importance of creativity in our lives. There is a 31-day challenge as part of World Watercolor Month, and this year's prompts are by Angela Fair. But you can participate in World Watercolor Month by tagging any paintings posted to social media during the month of July by using the hashtag World Watercolor Month. With everything going on in the world right now, doing a 31-day challenge might not be feasible for you. It's not for me, but please don't let that stop you from painting and sharing your work with others. World Watercolor Month also aims to raise awareness for the importance of art education, and that's why Doodle Wash teams up with the Dreaming Zebra Foundation to help support an equal opportunity and exploration of the arts for children and young adults. This is my third year participating in World Watercolor Month as an artist ambassador, meaning that I've donated my artwork to the WWM souvenir shop, where all of the proceeds will go to the Dreaming Zebra Foundation. The shop features World Watercolor Month souvenirs as well as limited edition pouches that feature artwork from an array of wonderful watercolor artists, many of which you probably already know and love. This year you can find my new tiger painting on the pouch that I donated, alongside many other amazing art pieces. If you're looking to add a lovely art pouch to your collection while supporting the arts for children, please check out the shop during the month of July, and don't forget to use the hashtag World Watercolor Month on all of your watercolor pieces on social media to raise visibility for this fundraiser and celebration of our favorite medium. Now, on to the Q&A. We're going to start off with art and work-related questions and work our way over to the more personal ones. The first question comes from KittyClaw4. How did you get started painting? I've been painting, drawing, coloring, whatever you want to call it, ever since I could hold a pencil or crayon in my youth. However, I didn't start watercolor painting until 2015. So if we're going with when did I start watercolor painting, that was also through a story that I've told before. When I was still working at the zoo, I was on my way out putting together curriculum boxes, and I was trying to come up with craft ideas that were going to be easily accessible for our visitors, and I came across a really fun little watercolor silhouette, fell completely in love with the medium, even just using Canson XL watercolor paper and Crayola watercolors, and had to know more about it. Here we are 5 years later, and I'm still totally obsessed. The next one is kind of a multi-part question from Michael Peters and JW, both from my Patreon. The questions are: why do I stay with watercolor as a medium? Are watercolors my primary medium? And are there any other mediums that I don't do but that I'm intrigued by? So I really gravitated heavily towards a watercolor. I've never stuck with another medium for as long as I've done this one. I've done graphite, I've done charcoal, I've experimented loosely with acrylics, some oils, pastels. Nothing ever really stuck like I did with watercolors. I just really fell in love with the techniques that I used, how fluid they were, and it was such a relaxing, wonderful experience that it's just what I enjoy most. As for another medium that I'm really heavily intrigued by, I think the closest runner-ups to watercolor that I hardly ever do but really love when I get the chance to work with them are soft pastels and charcoal. I know those are two that a lot of artists, especially here on YouTube, seem not to really like because they are messy, but I just find them really, really fun and a completely different experience from watercolor. So the next questions that I have are a two-parter. One is work-related and one is personal, and I had them split up at first, but when I started answering the work question, I realized I was touching on the personal question too. So Chronic Doodles asks, are you a self-taught artist or do you have formal training or a bit of both? And Snow Mouse Art asks, when you were younger, were you more of a STEM kid or an art kid? And did you have a hard time balancing the two interests? I really love that second question because I feel like it encapsulates me pretty well. And for those of you who don't know, STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And in the recent years, there has also been a movement to add arts into that and turn it into STEAM instead of STEM. In school, I was always pretty good at math, and I love life sciences. I never really gravitated towards chemistry or physics, though I took both. However, I loved life sciences so much that in high school, you're required to complete 3 years worth of science, which are biology, chemistry, and I guess whatever else you want. But when I was in my sophomore year, the chemistry class was full, so they put me in physics, which means I would need to make up chemistry later. And in my junior year, I got the opportunity to take a zoology class, so of course I did that. And then in my senior year, I had to make up the chemistry class that I missed, and I also really wanted to take physiology. So I ended up graduating with 5 years worth of science instead of 3. So I definitely was a STEM kid, I suppose. However, because I took all of those sciences, I didn't get to play around in the arts very much. I also had a really, really crappy guidance counselor who wouldn't let me take an art class and instead put me in band because he said band would be more fun, even though I wanted to take the art class. So I spent 2 years trying and failing to play a clarinet, and then my senior year, I finally got to take an art class when I had time for an elective. Other than that, I think I had 1 year of art in middle school. I took an art history class in college and a photography class in college. And I think that's it. When I got into watercolor, I decided to take an adult education watercolor class at one of my local campuses, and that was a lot of fun. I took, I think, 2 semesters or 2 quarters worth, I guess, and the teacher that I met there is someone that I still talk to and I'm friends with today. It's been really fun going from a pupil of watercolor to talking to her about the same level of education. The class with her was a really free-form class. It had all different levels. We would talk about core concepts and then have our own projects that we could work on throughout the course of the class. Everything outside of that, I learned through the internet. So I looked at blog posts and videos, mostly YouTube videos. I remember there was like 2 solid years after I left the zoo that I just watched watercolor videos every day, all the time. And I eventually did kind of burn out on them. I needed a little bit of a break, but I just wanted to be a sponge to absorb all the information I possibly could about this really fun medium. Snow Mouse Art also asks, if you could only paint with one color for the rest of your life, which would it be? I think this is an answer that would change based on when you ask me, though I'd always say it's important to pick a paint that is darkly valued so that you have a large range of color to work from. Right now, I am really digging Roman Schmal's Shadow Violet, which is a mixture of a couple different pigments that separate out into this really cool, moody vibe. I haven't gotten to try Da Vinci's new Artemis yet, which I am excited to as soon as it arrives, so maybe my answer will switch to that. And if I got to mix my own paint, like in a pan, and get to use that color forever, I might also choose something like a Terra Rosa or Indian Red mixed with cerulean. I really dig that gray. Jacobmakes asks if I have a favorite piece of artwork that I've done. I have a couple favorites. The one that comes to mind first is my snow leopard painting that I did last year. I don't know what it is about this painting in particular other than the eyes that I'm really drawn to. I think it's a really beautiful piece, and I had a lot of fun painting it, and it really surprised me. Another one for similar reasons that I did a little while back, probably a couple years ago at this point, is my great horned owl, and that was one that my patrons requested for a tutorial. I was super nervous to do it because I didn't think I'd be able to. I was using a reference that was super important to me of an owl that I actually got to work with for a very long time. I knew this owl for over a decade, and I really wanted to get it right, and I wasn't sure if I would. By the time I got to the end of that painting, I had nailed it, and that one I both impressed myself and was also really excited that I was able to paint this really special piece for me. Alex Stover asks, did you know what you wanted your YouTube content to revolve around from the beginning, or did you workshop some themes and find your niche after soul searching? When I first made my YouTube channel, I had already been watching a lot of other YouTube content, and I was really drawn to time-lapse videos. These were really popular at the time, and I thought, man, if you have people watching, you paint your work, you must have really made it as an artist, because that's just so cool. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to create art that people wanted to watch. But guess what? I hadn't been watercolor painting that long, and I wasn't that good yet. So I don't think that that's a realistic expectation to go into. Also, the landscape of art videos on YouTube has changed a lot over the years. There was a 6-month gap between those first videos and the next video that I uploaded, which was a palette pour, and that was another thing that I saw a lot of on YouTube that was really calming and pretty to watch. So then I thought, oh, maybe I'll make educational videos. I had an education background, and so I was naturally gravitated towards sharing the things that I was excited about with others, and it just kind of went from there. When I realized that I nerded out over pigment stuff and that there wasn't a ton of other people at the time on YouTube doing that, I realized that that was a pretty unique niche and that maybe I could slide in there. I don't know how much of it was conscious and how much of it was just creating content that I really enjoyed, but for the next, I think, like 2 years, I uploaded tons of reviews and tutorials. If you've been here for a long time, you'll know around that point I got pretty burnt out on reviews and wanted to go back to sharing my artwork with everyone. But if I uploaded artwork on its own, it didn't get very much traction. So that's when I started changing my format to the videos of having an educational component, but also having a demonstration. And I found that that's really where I feel I shine best. Alex Stover also asks, did I have some experience with film or photography before you were a YouTuber? When you started with YouTube, what were some of the technical challenges that you had, and do you rely on research more than trial and error? So this is a multi-pronged question. Yes, I had photography background. No, I did not have filming background. I have been doing photography since, 2007 or so. And I started my YouTube channel in 2016. I worked at a photography studio for 2 years before I worked at the zoo. I did mostly assistanting type things and ordering and that kind of thing. I wasn't a main photographer, but I helped a lot with the photography there. And I certainly think that that helped. However, that did not translate to being able to film my own videos. My early content is difficult to watch because the quality was so bad, even though I was using a DSLR. The problem is that DSLRs aren't really made to be video cameras, and so there's a lot of kind of workarounds you need to do and understand how that works. I also didn't have any good lighting. So to anyone getting started, I would say absolutely invest in lighting first. That is the most important thing, and then you can start upgrading your camera. Over the course of YouTube, I've had a couple different ways that I filmed. I used my old DSLR. I used a video camera that my grandpa bought me by my request for a birthday or a holiday. I think it was my birthday, so that I could try and make the quality of my videos better. And then I switched to my phone when I got the Google Pixel 2. I don't know why I forgot what phone I have. For the last 2 years, I've had my Google Pixel 2, and I would say for about 1.5 years, I filmed all of my YouTube videos. All the ones that started to look better were from that phone because the quality was so awesome. However, there were drawbacks to using my phone, and that mostly had to do with storage and transfer. So in the fall, I was granted a partial scholarship from the Top Teachers program at Skillshare that helped contribute to me buying a new camera, which is what I film on now. I definitely do not rely on research when it comes to technology. I don't like researching technology. It's not something I enjoy or can retain by looking at, so I would say almost all of my learning is through trial and error in that department. If there's a very specific question that I have about something, I'll look it up, but otherwise, I just figured it out on my own. The last question in the work category is from brashnsassyz. Would I ever be open to the idea of hosting an in-person artist workshop or retreat? Yes, this is something that I started researching probably over 2 years ago. We never made any of the discussions public at all, but there was a point where I had sent out emails to different content creators here on YouTube asking if they would be interested in putting together a summit. I was super into the idea, and then I started looking into the idea of moving. So for the last year and a half or more, I have been completely sidetracked and unable to follow up on that. It is something that I was going to look into resuming in 2020, and then the pandemic hit, so it's probably going to be put off for a little while longer, but this is definitely something I'm interested in, and let me know if you guys are in the comments below. Art of Katie Alina says, art can definitely be a way to chill out and relax. However, if I'm in pain or uncomfortable or upset, I find it hard, if not impossible, to get my paints out and work. Sometimes I can still write, but that's rare. Have you ever dealt with this? If so, what's some advice to get back to art when you don't feel well or creative? I don't know that I have a good answer for you, but I wanted to include it in this video because I feel like that a lot. I felt like that the entire month of June, which is why you haven't seen much of me. I have a really hard time motivating myself to work, to paint, to create when I am feeling really, really crappy. So I don't have a perfect answer for you. I would say if you're the type of person who, if pushing yourself to create something would help get past that block and then you'd feel better, then find a way to motivate yourself just to, I'll get up and paint for 5 minutes. And if I want to put it down after 5 minutes, then I'll put it down and not work on it anymore. And a lot of times I'll find that if you approach with that technique, you don't want to stop after the 5 minutes and you want to keep going. And that's one way to break out of it. There are other times when I just don't want to create, and that is okay, especially right now in the state of the world. I want everyone who is feeling guilty about not creating or not working through anything to just get rid of that feeling the best that you can. You are not obligated to create if you are not feeling well. Now, if you want to create and are having a hard time, then try that first technique, but also give yourself a break. Erin and her animals asks, how long have I been chronically ill and what are the diagnoses? I've had some form of chronic pain since 2006. I believe I was diagnosed in 2007 with fibromyalgia, and my current list is quite long of things that are wrong. So I've got fibromyalgia, CFS, sleep apnea, a variety of female reproductive health issues, depression, generalized anxiety disorder, and exercise-induced asthma. I'm probably missing something, but those are the ones I can think of right now. Oh, and my rib subluxations, which I usually group with my fibromyalgia, but it's a totally separate issue and it's what causes me the most pain. Basically, my ribs dislocate constantly. People with chronic pain tend to have more than one thing wrong with them. When I was first diagnosed with fibromyalgia, I thought, ooh, I'm lucky. I only have this really short list of things that are wrong with me instead of this longer list than I know a lot of other people have. But just give it time. They catch up with you. The Critters Gray asks, do I have an overseas destination that I would love to visit? We all know that you love the life-changing visit to Africa. Yes, I want to go back to Africa. There are plenty of other places that I'd like to see in the world. I'd love to go to Scotland, Ireland, Australia, Costa Rica. I guess that's not overseas, but it is out of the country. Belize, maybe. I really want to go back to Botswana. I would love to spend more time there. I always wanted to go to Kenya and Tanzania when I went to Africa, but those were not safe places for me to travel to at the time that I was traveling, so I'd like to go back there too. Both Amelia and Tiffany asked, would I ever get another horse? And I thought it was interesting that this question came up twice on different platforms. The answer is yes with an asterisk. So my chronic pain definitely plays a large role in my life, and I would never want to get an animal that I couldn't physically care for. So I would only get an animal if I felt I was in the right position to do so. I think I'd also like to be in a position where I could have the horse on my property, which was never a possibility in California, but it might be here in Texas. ENTP Disaster says, how do you feel about the celebritization of zoo animals? So I've given my stance on zoo animals in another video, I'm pretty sure. I do want to state, for those of you watching this for the first time, there is a big, huge difference between accredited facilities and non-accredited or roadside zoo facilities. I don't believe in the latter at all. They are usually in existence so that people can have their own big cats or other wild animals and just profit on that by people who are stopping by. They usually don't have the goal of education or conservation. Accredited facilities have to have an educational component and a conservational component to their mission statements. Working at an AZA accredited zoo for as long as I did, I fully believe in why they exist, why they need to exist, why the animals are there. In terms of the celebratization, if we're using that as a word, of zoo animals, the example that they gave was Fiona the hippo and her mom Bibi at the Cincinnati Zoo. So naming an animal, having a community gather around them. I think it's very important that the mass majority of people attach to these individual animals so that they want to do more for their species in the wild. In that regard, it's very important. There is a fine line though, and I do still get irked whenever I see posts like, oh my gosh, they're so cute, I want one. Like, I know they're not being serious, but it bothers me that people are like, I want a wild animal in my home. So as long as there's a healthy respect for wild animals, knowing that they are wild, they're not pets, they have names, they have stories, it's important we protect them, but making sure that distinction is really clear. I'm all for it. It helps them in terms of conservation. Miss Jennygranberry asks, do I listen to podcasts? Sometimes, not at the moment. I used to listen to a Heroes of the Storm podcast, which kind of comes into another question that will come up a little bit later. I have a couple other ones that I dabble in here or there. Sometimes I listen to Critical Role as a podcast, but mostly no. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. I've been listening to a lot of Audible books lately. I listen to music. I work best when I'm listening to music, but I often want to consume other content like YouTube videos and Audible books while I'm working. So that's often what I fall back to. It's just a case of too much stuff to consume and not enough time. The last question I saved because it has to do with the art piece that I'm creating today, and that is See Which Wellness's question of what are your views on the struggles LGBTQ folks face in the attempt to get equal rates as a cisgender / heterosexual counterpart. If you haven't already seen it, I have an older video where I repainted one of my first watercolor paintings ever of pride penguins, and was originally painted in support of when the federal government recognized gay marriage. The piece that you've been watching today is a companion piece to that original pride penguin artwork, and nothing about this is coincidental or accidental. The albatross were picked for a very specific reason, as were the colors used. So to my LGBTQA plus folks out there, I am with you. And just as I stand up for BLM and animal rights, I have been with you in this fight ever since I was in high school. It's always been important to me. I have most of my friends are part of the LGBT community, and it's something that has always been very important to me. So I'm sorry if that hasn't always come across in my videos. It has always been a cornerstone of what I deeply believe in as human rights, and I will always be by your sides. My Etsy shop is still closed at the moment, and probably will be for a little while longer as I kind of catch up on work from missing all of June, but when I reopen, there will be prints and hopefully stickers maybe available of this piece if you're interested. So let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see these cute little albatross in your own home, and if so, in what format you're most interested in seeing them. Thanks for joining me in this super long Q&A. I hope you had fun learning a little bit more about me, and I will see you around. Thank you so much to all my patrons who have been by my side this entire year. It's been a rough one, but I hope that we're getting back on track. Don't forget to participate in World Watercolor Month with that hashtag, or visit the souvenir shop if you want to support the Dreaming Zebra Foundation. And until next time, my friends, happy painting.